Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, SavageTechman. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. There was this little get-together this weekend. Just a few people came. It was called the 2015 New York Comic-Con. And so 150,000 people attended that. And it was held in New York City. We weren't able to be there, but we were following it live on Twitter and on YouTube. Plus, our resident research geek, my wife Cheryl, she put together her internet skills and she worked her magic so that she could bring us some highlights from the 4-day convention.
I think the overall big news from the convention was just a real emphasis on diversity in geek culture. So whether that's people of color or women, there were a lot of sessions even for children. So really a lot of different things being represented and talked about.
And speaking of diversity at Comic-Con, there's definitely a big focus this year on women getting into the business and writing the comics and changing it from the inside out. And Jamie Broadnax of Black Girl News joined the panel discussion on Melissa Perry Harris's MSNBC show. And we watched that on there.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal that you have like a real mainstream news program like that talking about, of course, she calls herself a nerd and uses the hashtag Nerdland. So it's not that surprising that Melissa Perry Harris would do it, but 20 minutes at least discussion and focus on the changing geek culture.
And how some of the comic books changed because of the female writers. There was a time where women were just objects and it was a man's world, and Comic-Con was just for white men.
And just a very particular kind of perspective on things. So another big area of diversity that has been expanded into is the LGBTIQ community. And so we were talking to some folks on Twitter, and one of the fellows we talked to was Ryan Colford at RyanC_photo. And this was his first time going to Comic-Con, so he was really excited to see so many different things and all the great costumes, but it was a little bit confusing, he said, to try to see everything because there was just so much there that was focused just on the LGBTIQ community just to begin with. So a lot of things, no matter what kind of thing you were looking for, you could find it at this Comic-Con.
Yeah, overall there was like a lot of great stuff at Comic-Con in New York. You had autograph signings, panel discussions, and advanced screenings. And let's talk about some of the celebrities who were actually there.
I think there were actually 4,502 different celebrities there signing autographs.
There was 3. There was us.
Oh, I forgot. No, we weren't there, remember?
We were there virtually.
But signing autographs or doing panel discussions. So, whether those were people in front of the camera or people who were the artists doing the books. But for instance, of course, David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson were there for X-Files, and Danny Glover was there.
Isn't he too old for this shit?
Maybe so. Eliza Dushku and Elijah Wood was there.
Yeah, he was looking for a ring, I think. He was on a quest. Jack
Black and Jamie Alexander and John Rhys Davies, which I have to apologize because I thought he'd been dead for a long time, but...
Well, just like in comics, people come back from the dead, so
I guess it's because
possible.
His character on Sliders died, and that upset me so much that I just killed him off in my brain. But Lucy Liu was there, and Natalie Dormer from Game of Thrones.
She was probably looking for another king.
Well, she's only married 3 so far, so I guess she's
running out of brothers.
She needs a full set. Rebecca Romaine and Sean Bean.
He actually made it to the end.
That is surprising.
There was Seth Meyers, Seth Green.
You could just go on and on and on.
And even Vin Diesel, he was there with the Last Witch Hunter panel. There were many anniversaries and reunions, and one of the ones I was looking forward to was the 30th anniversary of The Dark Knight. And that's the Dark Knight comic book.
Yeah, not the movies. Those were a little more recent.
And coming in late November of this year, Frank Millar's The Dark Knight Returns, The Master Race, which is the third and final book of the trilogy, is coming out. You had The Dark Knight Rises sequel in 2001 and 2002.
Probably the biggest anniversary was the 50th of Thunder Agents, but I was more excited about the 30th anniversary of Back to the Future.
Right.
For every year for the last 6 or 7 at least, everybody says this is the day that Marty McFly went back. But no, it was 1985. So we're finally at the 30th anniversary, and there was one panel in particular about that. In the description of the panel, I thought was very amusing because it said, "Panel will be followed by an enchantment under the sea dance, asterisk."
What did the asterisk stand for?
Not true.
Definitely.
That's not cool. I mean, I would have gone to the under the sea dance.
I would have too. Now, here's the thing, though, and I would have played Johnny Be Good. but about that, the 30th anniversary, they are re-releasing at least 2 or 3 of the films in theaters on the actual day.
Right.
In November, coming soon,
Very
in 2015.
cool.
So
Very
that's
cool.
kind of neat. There was also the Justice League reunion with founding members Kevin Conroy, who voices Batman so wonderfully, Susan Eisenberg, who does Wonder Woman, Superman, done by George Newbern,
Even
and just
Hot
the rest.
Girl and
Martian Manhunter, he's one of my favorites. One of the most underdeveloped characters.
well, and then there was also a reunion for
Green Lantern. Don't
the
forget.
Firefly cast. So I'm sure that was a big
There was a whole panel there, and they were hinting at a second season, though that's pretty doubtful.
Yeah.
And with everything going on at Comic-Con, it was nice to see that there were some charitable activities, including a ball and an art auction.
Well, and I thought one of the other things that we hadn't talked about yet was that there were a lot of activities for kids. And if you watched any of the coverage, you saw tons of kids. And one of the really great fundraising programs that I saw there was something called Blast a Trooper. And they did it every single day, but you could go in and they had Nerf guns, I guess, and you could blast Star Wars characters.
But one of the good things about that is the troopers would never hit you back.
Well,
They'd
even if
always
they
miss.
tried.
They tried.
And that benefited Make-A-Wish. So really
That's
a
awesome.
great thing of people,
Make-A-Wish
still
Foundation.
among the community giving back to the greater community too.
That's always a great thing. There were what a lot of people go to Comic-Cons to see, advanced screenings.
Yes. Lots of advanced screenings. So X-Files, which was a huge hit.
I'm super excited to see that when it returns in January. The truth is out there, and hopefully one day we will find it.
I don't know. I gave up on them, so I'm excited to maybe get excited about it again.
I'm like Mulder. I never gave up. I just went underground.
I'm like Gillian Anderson. I just had enough of this.
Yeah, you did.
We redheads have to stick together.
I suppose so. Robert Kirkman's Outcast, there was an advanced screening of that.
Well, and another thing that was huge. People are so excited. Netflix showed some of Marvel's Jessica Jones and Marvel's Daredevil. I think these are going to be gigantic hits on Netflix.
Well, Daredevil's about to come back for its second season, and Jessica Jones has played really well on these pre-screenings of before it actually goes on Netflix.
Right, with Kristen Ritter. I mean, I think it's just going to go through the roof more than maybe any other online series has done before.
Yes.
And then Fox was there with Border Town.
And all you Doctor Who fans out there, there was a big advanced screening of that.
There was a big sneak there, a sneak of Minority Report.
Which I've finally got caught up. I was a couple episodes behind on the season, and I've actually enjoyed it. But some breaking news that I've seen on the net about Minority Report is they cut this season down to only 10 episodes, which is probably not a good sign.
I'm tired of the little tiny seasons.
Yeah, well, I didn't really hear why, but I hope it's not a precursor to canceling it.
Well, another big thing, which included not just sneaks and previews, but huge session that Warner Brothers, which is really coming out with tons of television for geeks and nerds, but they did what they call the television takeover, and that featured Gotham, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, Blind Spot, Supergirl, Person of Interest. I mean, it just went on and on and on. So I can't even imagine the people who got a chance to go to that. They must have totally nerded out. What is it?
Yes.
Nerdgasm.
Yeah, or as I call it, geekgasm.
Geekgasm.
Yeah. What else did you think was cool about Comic-Con this year?
Well, I think I like to look at it from the perspective of another first timer that I talked to, because I think it's interesting to get their perspective. But someone we talked to out of New Jersey, Larry Conway, and his Twitter handle is at Zignag Speaks. And he's been to a lot of other conventions, but it's first time at the big New York convention. And he said he really enjoyed all the people doing autographs. And I'm telling you, I think like Keisha Castle Hughes, I think she signed autographs literally from dawn to dusk every single day, all 4 days. I mean, there were tons of autograph sessions, but he was a little bit disappointed that he didn't see a Hot Toys 1966 Batman figure.
I would have loved to have the 1966 Batmobile. In fact, if anybody wants to get me one for Christmas, it's not that far away.
Well, here's a teaser. Stay tuned for the next session.
Yeah, the next segment of this episode,
you're going to hear about the 1966 Batmobile.
Very special news on that. So, Cheryl, what do you think was surprising?
Well, I think that I was really super, super surprised that Disney was there with Disney, and Disney was there with just tons of Marvel. I mean, there was tons of stuff about Marvel, but hardly anything really about Star Wars, which was kind of shocking considering we're only a couple months away now from the release of Episode 7.
Right. They have been very uncommonly... I understand the need for silence and not really to let anything out about it, and I respect that, don't get me wrong. But you have to have a presence in social media these days, and that's been one of my fears, is that Episode 7, The Force Awakens, does not have enough out there in the social media, and you've got to be at Comic-Con, you've got to be talking Star Wars.
I don't think it's going to flop in any way,
No.
I mean, maybe it's just that there is so much going on out there in geek culture right now that we're just oversaturated and we don't have room for it, and maybe we're going to see a lot more.
There's always room for Star Wars.
In the last couple of weeks before the release.
There is all geek culture, and then there's Star Wars. So, all geek culture can just move just one step to the left and just let Star Wars in there.
You are feeding into George Lucas's ego really, really well.
Yes, or Disney's.
Oh, and I did want to say one other thing that I thought was super cool about the convention was you could actually learn useful things. You could go to sessions and, for instance, you could learn wand dueling, how to draw your own comic books, how to use social media more effectively, crowdfunding, which is huge right now, and creating your own books, creating your own films. We're going to be talking. Yeah, we're going to be talking later down the line with some folks who are using crowdfunding to try to do some films on future episodes of the show.
Right.
How to be a puppeteer.
Because
everybody needs that.
Yeah. I kill you. But one of the things that I thought was really cool from Comic-Con was the Killing Joke by DC, the famous comic. And they've been green-lighted to make the DVD or to Blu-ray movie of the Killing Joke with an R rating, which would be the very first for a DC straight to DVD, Blu-ray movie. But I'm not so sure they're going to actually do an R-rated version of The Killing Joke, but it definitely could be done. At the very least, it would be PG-13, but that was some surprisingly good news. It's kind of like finding out that Deadpool, the movie that's coming out in theaters, the big dilemma about how it was going to be PG-13 or if it wouldn't be as good unless it had that R rating, and it's actually going to be Marvel's first R-rated movie.
But you start to limit the audience the more that you do that.
I know, but certain material lends itself better in R-rated, and The Killing Joke probably better in R, even though I'm not sure I'm ready to see that. I've got the comic, obviously.
I mean, I guess it's not a risk, but I am concerned about how much darker things are getting. Even like some of the Star Trek stuff that's been coming out just seems to be getting darker and darker and darker. And so I want the material to be accessible for everyone.
Yeah, and realism, this is a good point, and maybe a discussion for another segment later on the podcast, but realism versus, you can be real but not dark. You don't have to always go with dark. Dark always seems more legitimate these days, but you can...
It's kind of pessimistic. I guess I'm just so Star Trekian. I'm so Roddenberry that I want the future to be
this happy, bubbly place where we all get along. Well, if you could have gone to just one thing, Cheryl, at Comic-Con 2015 in New York City, what would it have been?
Well, I mean, I have to say, and it goes back to Roddenberry, there was a session called The Amazing Economics of Star Trek. And they had a real economist and all in there talking about how in Star Trek, really, there's no one who is in need. And so people aren't working for money. And so they were talking about whether that economic well-being, that level of economic well-being could really be possible or not. So, I would love to think I'm such a glass almost full, not even glass half full optimist that is what the future is going to look like. So I would love to have gone to that session. Also, I'm a nerd as well as a geek. So.
I'm already on my second glass. That's how optimistic I am for the future. So, But if you want to find out more of this, remember that you can still catch a lot of these sessions from 2015 Comic-Con in New York. You can catch them on YouTube. And we will have links on our blog at geekhomeworld.blogspot.com.
It's time for a geekcation to your favorite geek destination.
Cheryl is joining me to chat about a little spot of the Geek Homeworld we found nestled in the Tennessee mountains.
Yeah, when we were planning to spend a week in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and over in Pigeon Forge, we really didn't expect that we were going to find something quite so geeky as the Hollywood Star Cars Museum. After all, Gatlinburg is better known for like country music and great hiking and all of that. So finding this one museum was
a little nugget of treasure.
You were certainly very excited about it.
When we were looking at planning out things to do in Gatlinburg, this was towards the top of my list.
No, I think it was the only thing you were like, I have to do that.
Yeah, okay, that's the truth. It definitely was one of the things I had to do on this trip.
So what did you think was the most, besides its location so far away from Hollywood, what did you think was the most surprising about the museum?
The different amount of vehicles that I saw that spanned so many TV shows, so many movies over so many decades.
It was a huge collection. It was like, and it wasn't a very big space really. So it was kind of like, those Matchbox car carrying cases. There was
which I had a lot of these Matchbox cars and Hot Wheels in my younger days.
Packed full, and even before you got in to the museum, they had right outside on the sidewalk, so you didn't even have to buy a ticket. A setup from the Avengers.
You had their Humvee from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
And they had all the life-size Avengers there, so you could
Thor, Captain America,
take pictures, and
Iron Man and all. It was decked out, and you even had on the roof, you had one of the Batmobiles featured up there.
Hanging over you.
Yes. So you could see it from a distance walking up down the main stretch in Gatlinburg.
And I was surprised because, we also went to the Titanic Museum. You absolutely could not take photos of anything there.
And that was spectacular.
But it was. But when you went to the Star Car Museum, you could take pictures, you could take video, you could use flash. I mean, you weren't supposed to touch the cars.
I was going to say, you could not touch the cars, but
you could kind of hover over it and look like you were touching the car for your picture.
Right.
Now, I must admit that you were definitely more excited about this than I was, but I did enjoy the Batman setup, but for different reasons than you did.
What were some of those reasons?
Well, I looked up under Batman's cape.
You did.
Yeah.
They had a Batman and Robin mannequins there.
With the
1966
the fireman's pole.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what I did or did not see under Batman's cape.
Well, that will just have to remain to the imagination. Yeah.
But there were a lot of different cars, like you said, from movies and from television. Mostly designed by George Barris, who has been designing Hollywood cars for... since the 50s at least. He
also had a great video that we watched when you went upstairs into one of the other lobbies right before the 007 experience that they had, which was awesome, which I'll talk about in a second. But the video that talked about so many things. It even mentioned the cursed James Dean car.
Which they had.
Yes. And it was a fascinating video. You're actually sitting in what looks like part of a car.
Like a drive-in theater
exactly.
kind of set up.
And that was kind of nice. And you had memorabilia, of course, everywhere on the walls.
And that was after you'd been scared to death by Christine.
As you're coming up the stairway.
Coming up the stairs, there's a dark stairwell.
From the movie Christine. And then you also had the Munsters car.
The Dragula, so their dragster from the Munsters. They had the Ecto-1 from Ghostbusters.
Was there prominently displayed. And you had a lot of famous people like Dolly Parton's car.
Right. Michael Jackson's car, Paul McCartney's
car.
Elvis, there was one of Elvis's cars there. But they also had setups from like Andy Griffith and
yes, and to talk about Elvis's car, they mentioned in the video that Elvis went there when they were building the car for him, and he talked to every single person who worked on that car, asked how their families were, and he remembered all of their names.
Every time he'd come back, he would ask everybody and remember everything about them.
And they had the check where he
they had the actual check that they had that he
signed
paid
to
them.
Elvis Presley. So that was pretty awesome. And they were just a myriad of cars. From MASH, you had the Jeep.
One of the Jeeps from MASH. Yes. And then also, you mentioned the 007 exhibition where it was, I think they said one of the largest collections. Not just they had, I think, two cars, but they had
they had an
all
Aston
kinds
Martin.
of things from, they had weapons, they had other props from the movie. So one of the large
all the different Bonds and all the different, it was really much a time capsule. You had Bumblebee from the Transformers movie was also there. There was just more than I can remember now.
I was very excited about the Flintstone mobile from the live action Flintstone because my father's the real Fred Flintstone, but that's a story for
he does resemble it. But
I took a picture and sent it to him.
Yeah, we got him the little miniature Flintstone mobile, and he loved that.
And there was a motorcycle from the Terminator, and what was the Nick Cage movie, Ghost Rider?
Ghost Rider, yes, they had the motorcycle there.
And it was just so many cars everywhere.
Yeah. And I loved, of course, getting my picture taken with Arnold, the Terminator,
exactly,
and all that. And they had
well, and speaking of pictures, that was another surprising thing that you could do there because, like I said, you couldn't touch the cars. But for a small amount, I mean, starting at just $9, they would let you get into any car of your choice and take souvenir photos. And then it just depended on whether you wanted a frame and what kind of frame you wanted as to what the price was. But you could just get a print. Or I think you just got the digital for $9.95. There's a couple dollars more for a print
and all that, and all different variations. Now, one of the biggest cars on display was from the Dukes of Hazzard, the General Lee, and it's every bit as impressive in person as you see it on TV.
I didn't try to jump through the window though. Well, but the two cars that you really wanted to see.
Yes, well, my main one, right off the bat, was the 1966 Adam West Batmobile, which I did get my picture taken in, and you can see on the blog, we'll have some of these pictures posted on there. And
it had the bat phone in it, too, so you also had a picture of you on the bat phone.
I picked up the bat phone, sitting in there, geeking out. There was also the Back to the Future car.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Yes. Well, and there was also the Batmobile from one of the Dark Knight movies, too. Mm-hmm. Although that display was extremely dark, and you really couldn't, even with flash, you couldn't get a decent picture.
But they had the Val Kilmer Batmobile there, which is a replica of the one that was outside the building. And there was a really cool thing. You go into the stairwell, and not many people know this. And if you go there, look for this right beyond
it's like towards the side of the building.
Right by the Val Kilmer Batmobile. You go through this doorway, and if you look to your right, you see the stairwell that's closed off, and it's like the brick has been torn away, and it's the Knight Rider KITT car coming through the wall. And that was awesome. And I was like, Cheryl, you got to come over here and check this out, because that was definitely a surprise. I was not expecting that, and that was awesome.
They had another kit, the full kit that you could walk up next to as well.
The actual car, yes. And it had the tags on it and everything. It had the Hasselhoff standee behind it. But on there, they had a sensor. When you looked by the car, you walked by the car, it would speak in the voice of KITT, the actual actor that did KITT. So...
that's why you kept walking back and forth?
several times because I wanted to hear Kit keep talking to me, and as if I were Michael Knight.
Yeah, so it was definitely worth the price of admission for me. Although I do have to say, one thing was it was just a little bit dank, and that sometimes happens in older buildings. They could probably change the carpet, but other than that, it was a really fantastic experience for not very much money. If you like cars, go there. If you like Hollywood movies and television, go there. It should be on your geek bucket list.
Definitely on your geek bucket list. But even if you're not a car aficionado, you would still enjoy the nostalgia of seeing these vehicles up close and in person. So I definitely recommend it. It was one of my most fun things to do while in Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Well, and even for me, it was fun. I don't care about cars, and I'm not as much of a Hollywood geek as you are, but
yes.
I enjoyed watching you geek out.
Yeah, it was. I was having a definite geekgasm there.
Geekgasm. So go to Gatlinburg. There is a lot of other stuff to do there too, but definitely check out the Hollywood Star Cars Museum. We'll have the link on our blog, which is geekhomeworld.blogspot.com. And we'll also have all the photos, a lot of the photos, including the ones of Ed in the Batmobile. And I shot a little bit of video of him while he was having his pictures taken, so we'll upload that too.
We'll try to see that on there too. All right, check it out. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast with your host, SavageTechman. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on iTunes, see us on YouTube, be part of our Mixler chats. Thank you. See you again on the Geek Homeworld podcast.
Geek Homeworld.